Hi, this is Carla. Do you want to know how to plan a really great vacation? Well, I've traveled to more than 50 countries, many of them several times. And within the past 5 years, I've visited China, Vietnam, Thailand, Egypt, India. And during this past year alone, I will have traveled to more than 15 countries when you include the upcoming cruise that I'll be taking that will include Russia and Finland and Sweden and Denmark and Estonia. I'm really looking forward to that. So before we get it started, I'd like for you to ask yourself 5 key questions. First of all, what kind of trip would you like to take? Then I'd like for you to ask yourself what time of year, how long would you like for your vacation to last, how much work do you want to do before you go and while you're there, and then finally, what is your budget? So let's start with researching of our trips. Once you've answered those questions, what options are available? Well, first of all, the option of doing everything a la carte is always available. You can book your airfare, your hotel, and then you can wake up every day and decide what your itinerary will be, and you can choose your own restaurants, your own evening entertainment, etc. The alternatives are to take package tours or cruises. Those are the 3 main options that you have available. Now, when it comes to package tours and cruises, how do you even know where to begin? Well, a place where I like to start is vacationstogo.com. They provide a wide array of package tour options, and they actually include all the major worldwide tour companies. They also, through cruises only, provide you with up-to-date cruise information with dates, itineraries, and pricing from all the major world cruise lines. So that's a great place to start. In fact, I almost always go there just to get a feel for what's available. You know, what package tours are popular and what are the prices. So that's what I recommend. So this is a page from Vacations to Go, where I was looking at something called The Splendors of Egypt. And here they have a 13-day package, land only, for $2,325. For singles, there's an additional $500 to $650. So that was with Insight Vacations, and here's actually a brochure. I sent for the brochure because I wanted to learn more about their European and their Egyptian tours. Another company for Egypt and the Nile tours is Uniworld. And here's their nice brochure with all the photos and all the maps and all the different travel itineraries. And of course they include the pricing. Another alternative is many universities, alumni associations have travel organizations, and they organize tours throughout the year to Asia, to Africa, to South America, to Europe. In fact, I receive these notifications about tours for our alumni association for Washington University in St. Louis all the time. I'd say 3 or 4 times a month I receive these. And this one is for the antiquities of the Nile Valley and the Red Sea. You think I only look at trips to Egypt. I don't, but I went a couple of years ago, so I still have a lot of these handy. This particular tour includes both Egypt and Jordan. And then you have private individuals who actually have a loyal following of travelers, and they organize their own tours. Reverend Leo Booth has just organized a tour to Egypt, as you can see here. That's his brochure. I've actually traveled with him in the past, and over the past 10 years he's organized trips to China, to Vietnam, to Thailand, to India, and to Mexico. So I took his Vietnam-Thailand tour and the India trip with him, and I've got to tell you that most of the people that went on our India tour, there were about 50 of us, had already traveled with him previously, either and or to China, to Mexico, to Vietnam, and or Thailand. So that's something else to keep in mind. And then of course you have all the cruise lines. And they offer a really easy way to travel because they do all the work. They do all the work. They provide your room, they provide 3 plus meals a day. They provide Vegas-style shows every night. They have on-board casinos. They have all kinds of activities throughout the day, from trivia games to salsa dance lessons to newlywed games. There's always a lot of variety on board cruise lines. And for those who just want to relax out by the pool or who want spa treatments, those are also available. And remember, everything is included, with the exception of the shore excursions. So that's something that you'll need to think about either in advance or once you board the ship, is to think about what kinds of shore excursions interest you and your travel companions. Something that I highly recommend for those of you who are taking cruises to more exotic destinations is that you may want to book private tours with local tour companies, because the shore excursions that the cruise lines offer tend to be very pricey. So that's a tip, and we'll talk more about that later. So let's review. We've researched our trip. Once we've answered the key questions about what kind of trip, when we'd like to travel, how long we'd like to travel, how much work we want to do in planning and during the trip, and then what is our budget. So the next thing that we want to do is, before we actually book the tour or the trip, is to research airfares. We want to look at itineraries and we want to look at pricing. So before you book, for example, a cruise or a package tour, you want to make sure, if you decide to buy it on your own, which a lot of people do, because if you do purchase it with the cruise line, for example, the fares are a lot more expensive. But what you'd like to do is look at itineraries and prices. You might see a deal on a great cruise leaving in 2 months, but once you explore airfares, you might find that you have to connect in perhaps 3 or 4 different countries, and you may have to go 2 days in advance, and it still may cost more than $2,000. So again, you want to make sure that the airline will offer you an itinerary and pricing that's consistent with your budget and your overall travel goals. So then you'll book the trip. You'll actually book the trip. If it's a package tour or a cruise, you'll leave a deposit. Anywhere from $250 to $800 per person is the norm. And then, of course, you'll make the final payment. You'll actually book the flights. Then you want to make arrangements for airport transfers. Once you land at your destination, you want to make sure that you know in advance how you're going to arrive at your hotel or your ship. Or you may just want to take your chances and take a taxi. But that's something that I highly recommend that you research in advance, because there are always unwritten rules about local transportation, especially as it pertains to tourists and especially as it pertains to people newly arriving into an airport. The next thing I encourage you to do is make sure that your passport is still valid. I've heard countless stories of people who have spent lots of energy and lots of money planning the vacation of a lifetime, and the day before departure they check the expiration on their passport and they realize that they're not able to take their trip. So make sure of that. If you're traveling out of the country, you also need to make sure that you know the rules about visas. Some countries require that you have a visa in advance of your trip, which means you have to mail your passport to a local embassy, and then they have to stamp your passport and mail it back to you. So you want to arrange for I'd say minimally 4 months before your trip to apply for a visa. Actually, some people do it 2 months or 3 months before. Because I'm a planner, I like to give myself more lead time. There's some countries that, of course, don't require a visa at all, and then there are other countries that allow you to purchase the visa upon arrival, such as Egypt. Yes, I keep bringing up Egypt as an example. Okay, back to cruise line bookings. If you are going on a cruise, something that's kind of a little known secret, but pretty widely known among people who are frequent cruisers, is cruisecritic.com. And what is cruisecritic.com? That is a forum where you can go and learn all about lots of different cruises, but it's a forum where you can actually go and join a board of people who are going on your specific cruise. Isn't that amazing? You can actually go there and meet other people. You can read all the recommendations. You can ask questions. You can read other people's answers to other people's questions. It's a great way to not only learn a lot about what to expect for your upcoming cruise, because people who have already taken that cruise go back and post there, and they give advice and recommendations, but you can also meet other people. That's a great place for you to connect with other people who will be on your cruise who have already planned private tours. That's what I did on my 6-country Eastern Mediterranean cruise last year. I booked tours, the overnight tour to Egypt, the tour to Ephesus, and I did Rome and Athens with the same group of people because one woman had actually found local, reputable of course, tour operators in those destination cities. You can also join the meet and greet, which is a party that is thrown on behalf of the cruise line for everyone who actually registered on Cruise Critic and joined the meet and greet. So it's another nice little benefit associated with cruisecritic.com. So what about spending money? What are you going to be able to use once you arrive in your new destination? Again, if you're traveling out of the country. Well, don't even think about traveler's checks anymore. I was at the bank last week and I asked them if they even sell them anymore, and they said they don't. And that was Bank of America, by the way. So yeah, because of the prevalence of ATMs in all major cities all over the world, I believe it's difficult to get traveler's checks, and it's probably even harder for you to cash them anywhere other than maybe banks and some hotels overseas. So here's what I recommend that you do. Take a lot of cash. I've had no problems with it in my last couple of trips. So take cash, take a lot of small denominations. So in case you want to exchange a small amount of currency, you'll be able to do that with ease. But you also may want to use small U.S. currency for tips if you've run out of your other local currency. And there are some cases where you'll be surprised to find out that you're in another country that uses another country, but they'll still take U.S. dollars. So always have some U.S. dollars. You just never know when they'll come in handy. Also remember, ATMs are prevalent all over the world. One thing I highly encourage you to do before you leave is to call your banks and your credit card companies and make them aware that not only you'll be out of the country, which countries, and the timing of your trip. Why? If you're in Israel, or if you're in India, your credit card may be declined because that purchase, that transaction could look suspicious to your bank if they expect you to be only using your credit card in Chicago or New York or San Francisco. So please remember to do that. I always do that. Another thing that I highly recommend that you do in advance is make sure that all of your electronic gadgets are working. Yes, take out that camcorder. Make sure it's still working. Make sure you have the power cords or batteries. Make sure that you have extra memory sticks, whether it's XD cards or SD or SD cards, and make sure it's all still working. Make sure your cameras work. You just never know. Twice the day before I was leaving on trips, my cameras decided to stop working, so I had to run to my local electronics store, buy a new camera, learn how to use it all over again, and take them with me. Or you might want to take 2 cameras, depending upon where you're going. I generally do that, because I always have more than one camera that's still working. Another thing that I highly recommend that you do that will make your trip so much more meaningful is to research your destinations. Go to the library, go online, Google your local your destinations, go to the bookstore and buy books, and just immerse yourself in learning everything you can about the history, about the government, about politics, about the geography, about all the local characters. Did they play in the World Cup? If so, who did they beat? It makes it a lot more fun if you know all the current events and all the key players. I highly recommend that. Something else that I like to do to aid me in that is I read novels that are set in those countries. I read The Good Earth when I was in China, and I read A Fine Balance when I was in India. It just made it, I've read those novels with characters that brought to life those cultures. I also like to rent films set in those countries. Another thing that I recommend is that you make sure that you select the right luggage and the right carry-on bag. Something else that I always do, and I even give this as gifts to friends, is use a round-the-neck pouch that will carry your passport, your ID, a little bit of cash for tips and a cup of coffee. It'll hold all of your tickets and your itineraries. It just makes it really easy if all of this information is accessible around your neck, so you don't have to go digging in and out of your carry-on bags or out of your purse. And finally, something that I always do whenever I travel, no matter what, is I have a packing checklist. Yes, I usually have 2 long columns, and I use the same list over and over, but sometimes I modify them depending upon where I'm going. And I make sure that I know in advance everything that I'm going to take on that trip. And guess what? I always have everything that I need because I literally go down that checklist and I cross everything off. But again, like everything that I do it in advance. Don't wait until the last minute to start writing your checklist. Don't wait until the last minute to start packing, because there'll always be a couple of things that you realize you don't have, and you may not have time to go out and get them. So, happy travels. This is Karla Scott of Global Ways. I'll see you soon. Bon voyage.